The Last Hope. The Galactic War had raged for 3 standard years. The Vexari Empire, with their countless worlds and vast resources, had systematically conquered every system that stood in their path. Their ships, black as the void with pulsing crimson energy lines tracing their hulls, were nearly impervious to conventional weapons. Their technology was centuries beyond most species in the known galaxy. The coalition of allied worlds had formed as a desperate measure, uniting over 30 spacefaring civilizations under a single banner to resist the Vexari advance. But even their combined might was failing. System after system fell, and now the Vexari had set their sights on human space. Earth had only achieved faster-than-light travel 43 years ago. Compared to the ancient races of the coalition, humans were mere children in the cosmic arena. Their technology was rudimentary, their fleet small, and their understanding of galactic politics naive. But humans had been welcomed into the coalition for their resourcefulness, adaptability, and uncanny ability to solve problems that had stumped other species for generations. Now, humanity faced extinction. Admiral Helena Reyes stood on the bridge of the coalition flagship Eternal Vigilance, her weathered face illuminated by the tactical holodisplay. The massive Arctonian vessel, nearly 3 kilometers long, represented the pinnacle of coalition engineering. Around it, 500 warships from 24 species formed a defensive perimeter around Earth and its colonies. "They're coming," said Kralthex, the Thexian tactical officer, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence as he studied the long-range scans. "The Vexari fleet has just entered the Sol system. Initial count shows over 800 vessels." Reyes closed her eyes briefly. The intelligence had been accurate then. The Vexari had committed nearly a third of their total military might to this campaign. They weren't just looking to conquer Earth, they wanted to make an example of humanity. "All ships, battle stations," she ordered, her voice calm despite the gravity of the situation. "Defensive formation Omega. Remember the plan." The plan. A desperate gambit based on theoretical technology and untested theories. In normal circumstances, no military commander would stake the survival of their species on such a long shot. But these weren't normal circumstances. The coalition had tried everything else. "Admiral," her communications officer called out, "I'm receiving a transmission from Luna Base. Captain Chen reports the Defiance is ready to launch." Reyes nodded, allowing herself a glimmer of hope. "Put her through." The holodisplay shifted to show the face of Captain Maya Chen, one of Earth's most decorated naval officers. Behind her, a sleek bridge hummed with activity as her crew made final preparations. "Admiral," Chen said, her expression determined, "we're ready." "The Vexari will be in range within 30 minutes, Reyes replied. "You understand what's at stake here." Chen's jaw tightened. "Completely, Admiral. Project Quantum Shield is operational. Dr. Eisenberg assures me the theoretical models are sound." Theoretical being the operative word, Reyes couldn't help but point out. No one has ever attempted to manipulate quantum fields on this scale before. "With respect, Admiral, that's why we're going to win. The Vexari can't defend against what they don't understand." Reyes studied the younger woman's face. Captain Chen had volunteered for this mission knowing the odds. The Defiance was humanity's newest warship, but it was still small compared to the behemoths in the coalition fleet. What made it special was the experimental technology it carried. Technology developed by Dr. Sarah Eisenberg, whose understanding of quantum mechanics had revolutionized human physics. "Good hunting, Captain. For all our sakes." Chen saluted sharply. "We won't let you down." As the transmission ended, Reyes turned back to the tactical display. The red dots representing the Vexari fleet were moving inexorably toward Earth. She had positioned her ships to create a layered defense, with long-range artillery vessels in the rear and heavily armored ships at the front. But against the Vexari's phase cannons and quantum torpedoes, even the strongest coalition shields would fail eventually. Everything depended on the Defiance now. Deep within the lunar shipyards, the Defiance powered up its engines. The vessel was unlike any other in Earth's fleet. Its hull incorporated crystalline matrices that could, in theory, manipulate quantum fields. Dr. Eisenberg's breakthrough had come from studying ancient texts discovered in the ruins of a long-dead civilization. The aliens, whoever they had been, had understood quantum mechanics on a level that modern science was only beginning to grasp. On the bridge, Captain Chen strapped herself into the command chair. Status report. All systems green, Captain. Her XO, Commander Rajpatal, responded. Quantum shield is at standby. Dr. Eisenberg reports power levels are stable. Chen nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. The Defiance carried a crew of only 73, all volunteers who understood the experimental nature of their mission. They might not return from this. In fact, the odds were heavily against it. Helm, take us out. Full stealth protocols. The Defiance glided silently from its berth, its hull absorbing sensor suites rather than reflecting them. Another innovation from Dr. Eisenberg's team. The ship accelerated rapidly, heading not toward the Coalition defensive line, but on a tangential course that would bring it around behind the advancing Vexari fleet. They haven't detected us, Paddle noted, watching the sensor readings carefully. Good. Maintain course. We need to get close enough for maximum effect when we activate the shield. The minutes ticked by intense silence as the Defiance moved into position. On the main view screen, Chen could see the imposing Vexari fleet. Hundreds of ships moving in perfect formation, their black hulls seeming to devour the starlight around them. At the center of the formation was the Vexari command ship, the inevitable Conquest. Nearly 5 kilometers long, it dwarfed even the largest Coalition vessels. Intelligence suggested it carried the Vexari High Commander, Drexar, one of their most accomplished military leaders. Taking out that ship would throw the Vexari forces into disarray, at least temporarily. We're in position, Captain, the helm officer reported. Optimal range for shield deployment. Chen took a deep breath. Dr. Eisenberg, are we ready? From the science station, Dr. Sarah Eisenberg looked up, her eyes reflecting the blue glow of her console. She was young for her accomplishments, barely 30, with a mind that seemed to operate on a different level than those around her. As ready as we'll ever be, she said. But Captain, I must warn you again. We don't know exactly how the Vexari ships will react to the quantum field. The theoretical models suggest their phase technology should experience catastrophic failure, but... Noted, Doctor. Chen interrupted gently. But we're out of time and options. She turned to face the view screen, where the first exchanges of fire were now visible between the Coalition and Vexari fleets. Brilliant energy beams crisscrossed the void, and already she could see several Coalition ships with serious damage. Activate the quantum shield. Eisenberg nodded and began the activation sequence. The Defiance hummed as power was diverted to the experimental systems. On the hull, the crystalline matrices began to glow with an eerie blue light. Shield activating in 3, 2, 1. A pulse of energy, invisible to the naked eye, but blazing on their sensors, expanded outward from the Defiance in a perfect sphere. It passed through nearby space at faster than light speed, encompassing the rear third of the Vexari fleet before they could react. The effect was immediate and devastating. Vexari ships caught in the quantum field suddenly lost power. Their phase drives, which allowed them to exist partially out of normal spacetime, abruptly failed. Vessels that had been nearly invulnerable moments before now had conventional shields at best, and many had no defenses at all as their systems crashed. It's working, Patil exclaimed, watching as dozens of Vexari ships drifted powerless. Chen didn't allow herself to celebrate yet. Weapons, target the disabled vessels. Fire everything we've got. The Defiance's conventional weapons, railguns, plasma torpedoes, and laser arrays, opened up on the vulnerable Vexari ships. Other vessels, not disabled but experiencing system failures, began to break formation, their movements erratic. On the Coalition command ship, Admiral Rice watched in astonishment as the rear of the Vexeri fleet suddenly fell into chaos. "What's happening?" she demanded. "Unknown energy field detected, Admiral," her science officer reported. "It appears to be emanating from the Defiance." "They've done it." Rice didn't waste the opportunity. "All ships, target the affected Vexeri vessels. Concentrate fire on their command ships first." The Coalition fleet responded with a coordinated barrage that tore through suddenly vulnerable Vexeri vessels. Ships that had seemed unstoppable were now exploding under concentrated fire, their fearsome weapons silent. But the effect wasn't universal. The Vexeri command ship and the forward elements of their fleet were outside the range of the quantum field, and they were turning to face this new threat. "Captain," Patel warned, "the remaining Vexeri ships are breaking off their attack on the Coalition. They're coming for us." Chen had expected this. The Defiance had just become the primary target for the entire Vexeri armada. And while the quantum shield had worked beyond their expectations, it had also drained their power reserves. They wouldn't be able to generate another pulse for at least 20 minutes. "Evasive maneuvers," she ordered, "and send a message to Admiral Rice. Tell her to press the attack while we have them divided." As the Defiance accelerated away from the pursuing Vexeri ships, Chen knew that the real battle was just beginning. They had surprised the enemy, bloodied them for the first time in this long war. But the Vexeri still outnumbered the Coalition, and now they would be fighting with the desperation of a predator that suddenly finds itself potential prey. The fate of Earth, of all humanity, hung in the balance. Turning the tide. High Commander Drexar of the Vexeri Empire had never experienced defeat in his 3-century military career. He had personally overseen the subjugation of 17 spacefaring species and countless pre-FTL civilizations. The Vexeri's technological superiority had always ensured victory. Until now. "What happened?" he demanded, his voice cutting through the chaos on the bridge of the inevitable conquest. "How did a primitive human vessel disable 1/3 of our fleet?" His science officer, Mivex, worked frantically at her console. "Unknown, High Commander. The energy signature is unlike anything in our database. It appears to be some form of quantum disruption field specifically calibrated to interfere with our phase technology." "Impossible," Drexar snarled. "These humans barely understand basic spatial dynamics. They cannot have developed such technology on their own. The evidence suggests otherwise." Mivex replied carefully. "The field originated from a single human vessel. Our sensors indicate it has some form of crystalline structure integrated into its hull." Drexar's eyes narrowed. The precursors. It had to be. The ancient race that had mysteriously vanished millennia ago, leaving only fragments of their advanced technology scattered across the galaxy. The Vexeri had built their empire by hoarding and adapting such fragments. Had the humans somehow stumbled upon precursor quantum technology? "Track that ship," he ordered. "Divert all available vessels to intercept and destroy it. Nothing else matters." Meanwhile, aboard the Defiance, Captain Chen was executing a series of evasive maneuvers that pushed the experimental vessel to its structural limits. Behind them, nearly 200 Vexeri warships were in pursuit, their weapons fire illuminating the void with deadly energy. "Shields at 42%. Commander Patel reported grimly. "We can't take much more of this." Chen studied the tactical display. The Coalition fleet was engaging the remaining Vexeri forces, taking advantage of the division in the enemy ranks. But the Vexeri ships pursuing the Defiance were gaining ground. "Dr. Eisenberg, status of the quantum shield." The physicist looked up from her station, fatigue evident in her eyes. "Power reserves are at 68% and climbing. We could generate another pulse in approximately 12 minutes, but it won't be as powerful as the first one." Chen nodded. 12 minutes might as well be an eternity in space combat. "We need to buy time." "Helm, set course for the Jovian debris field." Jupiter's orbital space had become a maze of asteroids, derelict ships, and mining stations, remnants from the early days of human solar expansion. It wasn't much, but it might provide some cover and force their pursuers to slow down. As the Defiance changed course, Chen opened a channel to the Coalition flagship. "Admiral Rice, this is Captain Chen. We've successfully deployed the quantum shield once, but we need time to recharge for a second attempt. We're being pursued by a significant portion of the Vexari fleet." Rice's face appeared on the screen, her expression grim but determined. "Understood, Captain. We're pressing our advantage against their main force. Can you lead your pursuers into a position where we can trap them between us?" Chen quickly calculated distances and trajectories. "Affirmative, Admiral. If we can reach the Jovian field and hold out for 15 minutes, we could bring them into a crossfire situation near Mars orbit." "Make it happen, Captain." "And Chen, that was one hell of a punch you just threw. The Coalition owes humanity a debt." As the transmission ended, Chen turned to her crew. "You heard the Admiral. We need to survive the next 15 minutes. All power to engines and shields." The Defiance surged forward, pushing its revolutionary drives to their limits. Behind them, the Vexari pursuit ships adjusted course, their formation spreading out to prevent the humans from doubling back. "We're running on emergency power," the engineering officer reported. "Weapons offline. Shields completely down. We have minimal propulsion and life support." Before Chen could respond, the tactical officer called out, "Captain, the Vexari fleet. They're breaking formation." It was true. With the destruction of their flagship and the death of High Commander Drexar, the rigid Vexari command structure had shattered. Some ships were retreating, while others milled about in apparent confusion. Still others continued to fight, but without coordination or strategy. Admiral Rice's voice came through on the emergency channel. "Captain Chen, I don't know how you did it, but the Vexari fleet is in disarray. We're pressing the attack. Hold position. We're sending ships to assist you." Chen looked around at her exhausted but triumphant crew. "We did it," she said simply. "We gave humanity a fighting chance." In the weeks that followed, the Coalition forces drove the remaining Vexari ships from the Sol system and began a counteroffensive that would eventually push the once unstoppable Empire back to its core worlds. The technology derived from the quantum shield was refined and deployed across the Coalition fleet, nullifying the Vexari's primary technological advantage. Captain Maya Chen and the crew of the Defiance became legends not just among humans, but throughout the Coalition. Their actions had turned the tide of a war that had seemed unwinnable, proving that determination and ingenuity could overcome even the most overwhelming odds. Earth, once considered a minor player in galactic politics, earned a new respect among the Coalition races. Human scientists, working alongside their alien counterparts, continued to develop the quantum shield technology, advancing understanding of physics throughout known space. And somewhere in the vast archives of Coalition historical records, a new term entered the lexicon of galactic civilization: humanity's defiance, referring not just to a single ship, but to the indomitable spirit of a species that refused to surrender when faced with extinction. In the Great Assembly Hall of the Coalition Council, a simple plaque was installed, bearing words attributed to Captain Chen. "Never underestimate a species fighting for its survival. We may be young among the stars, but we will not go quietly into the night." The Vexari had brought an armada to conquer Earth. One human ship had changed everything.